Before long, we're gonna sell this house and move into a high-rise condo, so you better start looking for a new place. Maggie's mother, Karen, sneered. You're not thinking you'll get a dime of our father's inheritance, are you? We're having you relinquish your right to it. You got that? Ashley, my sister, threatened me. Her face, a horrifying mask of cruelty. Ashley's boyfriend stood to the side, his laughter only adding salt to the wound. It was unbearable. Our father's funeral had barely finished, and they dared to talk like this. You're the absolute worst. I can't stand this anymore. I'm cutting ties with you all. The moment I shouted those words, the doorbell rang. Standing there was a man I felt like I've met before. My name is Maggie. At 22, I'm soon to graduate from university. Nothing to brag, but I'm strong-willed and patient. From my childhood through university, I've always quietly, diligently focused on my studies. I've maintained reasonably high grades, and I do have dreams I want to fulfill. Although I'm content with my daily life, I also have a significant worry, and that is, Maggie, come downstairs now! A loud voice rang from below. With reluctance, I went downstairs to find my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley. Mom, sis, what's up? I was studying. Ha! As usual, you nerd. You're still studying, even though university is almost over. What a hard worker. The one laughing was my sister, Ashley, a beauty like our mother. She's flamboyant and was even a popular model back in the day. Now, she's unemployed, under the guise of helping around the house. We're going shopping. You should clean the dishes and do the laundry. Don't forget to iron properly, okay? Also, we're out of detergent and other things, so you should go shopping. Mother calmly ordered me to do the housework. Knowing she would get furiously angry if I talked back, I quietly responded, okay. They left the house dressed up to the nines and high in spirits. I need to get on with that, I muttered quietly as I started to clean up the mess they had left behind. Mom, a former beauty queen, has extravagant tastes and loves luxury. She's always favored my beautiful sister while ignoring me, since I'm not all that pretty. Moreover, they've always dumped housework and other chores on me as if I'm their maid. My sister took advantage of this, and I've been oppressed by them since I was little. Yet, I've tolerated it because, after all, we are family. And then, my phone rang. When I looked at my phone screen, it read, Dad. Hello? Dad! It's been a while. I could tell my voice had brightened. Ah, Maggie. It's been a while. Are you doing okay? I'm doing great. How about you, Dad? It's night there, right? How was work? I'd like to say I'm fine, but I've been having headaches lately. I'm planning to go see a doctor soon. How's your schoolwork? Is it going well? Dad, take care of yourself, okay? Thanks to you, everything is going well. I'm studying hard to achieve my dream. That's my girl. You're always so diligent. Remember what I always say? Be righteous and kind, right? Don't worry. I'm doing my best. That's my Maggie. I'll bring lots of souvenirs when I come home next time. After that conversation, I hung up the phone. To put it bluntly, my family is well off. This was largely due to my elite father, Harry, who has been flying around the world for work since his younger days. Although he was often away from home, he was kind to me and showered me with love whenever we had the chance to meet. I adored him dearly. However, to my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley, he was nothing more than an ATM. The harsh truth was that they were living lavishly on the money he earned. "Be righteous and kind, Maggie," he would say, his presence always nurturing and supportive. It was my rock. That's why I was able to stay strong until now. Several months later, shortly after I graduated from university, a chilling event occurred. "Maggie, Dad has—" Karen burst into my room, her face as pale as a ghost. Apparently, my father had collapsed at the airport as soon as he returned home and was rushed to the hospital. Upon hearing the news, Ashley, Karen, and I immediately headed to the hospital. There, my once strong father lay, frail and helpless. "We suspect he's had a stroke," the doctor informed us. Despite extensive treatment, my father barely improved. To be specific, he was left with severe physical paralysis and a speech impairment, unable to stand or converse properly. To care for my now dependent father, I decided to put my dreams on hold and dedicate myself to his care at home. Predictably, Karen and Ashley completely ignored him, treating him as if he was useless. They didn't even help with his care, let alone come by and see him. "Mom, Ashley, if you helped with Dad's care once in a while, I'm sure he'd be really happy," I pleaded. However, their response was always, "We're too busy. We've left Dad's care to you." "Dad, it's a lovely day today," I would tell him. "Maggie, thank you," he would struggle to reply. I studied and learned about caregiving. I made sure he could see outside by keeping the curtains open, fed him specially prepared meals, and arranged fresh flowers every day. Though I had help from professional caregivers, I did everything I could for him with all my heart. Remembering my father, who had worked so hard for us and showered us with love, I was desperate to do everything I could for him. Whenever times got tough, I would recall his words, "Maggie, always be righteous and kind." And each time, it gave me the strength to carry on. One day, I overheard Karen and Ashley whispering in the house. "Thanks to Dad's insurance money, I was able to buy that bag I wanted," Karen said. "I know, right? Thanks, Dad. Maybe I should get a new wallet too," Ashley chimed in. I held back from yelling at them and continued to listen, only to hear Karen utter something even more shocking. "If Dad were gone, we'd receive a few $100 million from his life insurance and inheritance. He's been saving up through his job and investments." "Wow, Mom. Then we should totally buy a luxury condo. And my boyfriend could live with us. Oh, I wish Dad would hurry up and die." Indeed. I couldn't bear it any longer and left the scene. My father was struggling to stay alive, and yet they were spending his insurance money and dreaming about a luxury condo from his inheritance, wishing for him to die sooner. I felt like vomiting out of anger and despair. In reality, my mother and Ashley had been living it up recently, buying up brand name items, and even leaving my father and me behind to go on overseas trips. But there was no way I could tell my father, who was already having such a hard time. I didn't want to sadden him. Pretending I hadn't heard my mother and Ashley's conversation, I devoted myself to taking care of my father. Many friends and acquaintances often came to visit my father. They all loved him. I particularly remember an older man in a suit and glasses who often came. I wasn't present, but he was probably an executor from my father's company or something. He would bow his head and greet me whenever he saw me. I was happy that my father was loved, and on the days when he had visitors, his face seemed brighter. I thought these days would continue, but a few months later, my father had a stroke recurrence and suddenly passed away. Dad, Dad, I cried, clinging to my father's body that no longer spoke. Even my mother and Ashley shed tears this time, mourning the loss of my father. What followed was a whirlwind. There was a wake and a funeral to be held. And of course, my mother, the chief mourner, did nothing. Neither did Ashley. In the end, I had to go through all the procedures by myself, running around in a rush. The wake ended, and many people attended the funeral, with many flowers arriving as well. Seeing the character and popularity my father had in life, I felt somewhat comforted. At the funeral, sobbing voices echoed, and my father, with a peaceful face, embarked on his journey. In the evening of the day when the first 7 days were over, I had finally started to recover a bit from the sadness. As I was cleaning up the 7th day, my mother and Ashley called me into the living room. Next to Ashley was a man who was said to be her fiancé. Like Ashley, he looked good, but given his former job as a male stripper, his inner frivolity was clear. Apparently his name was John. "So, about father's inheritance," my mom began. I had a terribly bad feeling. And then, my mother, laughing scornfully, said something outrageous. "We'll get a lot from your father's inheritance. So we decided to sell this house and live in a luxury condo. So you should leave." Mom, it's only been a week since Dad passed away. Are you already talking about the inheritance? And a luxury condo? Quiet. We've already signed the contract. It's a high-rise, brand new. You've already signed? When did you? About a month ago, I guess. A month ago? But Dad was still doing fine. Huh? He was practically dying. He had a lot of money, so it'll work out fine. My mother was selfish as ever. Ashley continued. Yes, that's right. The luxury condo is for Mom, me, and my fiancé. So, you're a nuisance. You should hurry up and find some shabby apartment, okay? Even you, sis? Are you serious? Of course. Don't even think about getting any of Dad's inheritance. We'll have you renounce it. You understand, right? Ashley was approaching me with a terrifying expression. Next to her, her fiancé was laughing. Seeing my father's inheritance in the corner of my eye made me feel suffocated. It was too much. They had the nerve to say such things before my dad's mourning was even over. You guys are the worst. I can't stand it anymore. I'm cutting ties with both of you. Huh? We'd actually feel relieved if you cut ties with us. My mother and Ashley laughed at me. I clenched my fists and started trembling. At that moment, the front doorbell rang. Straightening my trembling breath, wiping my tears, I opened the door, thinking it might be a late visitor. And then, "Good evening. My condolences for your loss." The man who deeply bowed his head at the entrance was the middle-aged man in a suit and glasses, who frequently visited my father's sick bed. "Thank you. Please come in." As I was about to invite him in, the man presented his business card. "Please check this. My name is Watson, an attorney assigned by your father." The business card indeed belonged to a law firm, and although I had not noticed it before, a badge denoting him as a lawyer was gleaming on his chest. "Dad's lawyer?" As I was surprised, my mother, Ashley, and her boyfriend came out from behind. "Huh? What does a lawyer want from us?" Watson responded to my mother's skeptical expression. "I've come to discuss your husband's inheritance. Can we talk for a moment?" Watson sat down in the living room. My mother sat directly across from him, and Ashley and her boyfriend sat next to her. I ended up sitting on the side, facing them alone. Watson took out several documents from his bag, looked at us, and then began to speak slowly. First, may I read your husband's will? That man could barely move or speak, and yet he left a will? Get on with it, please. My mother spoke in an irritated tone. Then, allow me to read it, Watson said in a quiet voice. The will, the testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths as follows. The testator leaves all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maggie. A moment of silence fell upon the room. The testator designates the following as the executor of the will. Before Watson could continue reading, Ashley interrupted. Huh? Wait a minute. What did you just say? Didn't you hear me? The testator designates the... No, the part before that. Let me read it again then. The testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maggie. What does that mean? So that means... Huh? The next one to shriek was Karen, our mother. In other words, it means that Maggie will inherit all of the estate. What? Karen and Ashley exclaimed in unison. I was so shocked that I couldn't breathe, and all I could do was stare in astonishment. Next, I will read the postscript of the will, Watson continued, looking at me. In other words, this is your father's final message. I quietly listened. Maggie, you gave up your precious dreams to take care of me. I wasn't able to pay much attention to you because I was always working, but I truly appreciate it. Thanks to you, I was able to pass away peacefully and fulfilled. Upon hearing my father's last words from Watson, tears started to well up in my eyes. Maggie, always be kind and correct. I know you can do it. Your father will always be watching over you. Please, be happy. All I could do was sob in front of them, while Karen and Ashley were making a big fuss. Wait, what does that mean? So the inheritance all goes to her? Yes, what happens to our money? In response to their outburst, Watson cast a brief glance at them. You two are not mentioned. By the way, Maggie is also the sole beneficiary of the life insurance. What are you talking about? Do you think that's allowed? Karen turned beet red, ready to burst at any moment. That's right. Isn't there something called a reverse portion? That's supposed to be guaranteed to the wife and the children, right? Ashley leaned forward eagerly. You're referring to the statutory reserve. Indeed, you two have the right to claim a statutory reserve from the inheritance that Maggie will receive, Watson said in a matter-of-fact tone. Of course! Karen seemed to be getting back to her usual self. Even if there's a will, if its contents are unfair, you can claim a share of the inheritance prescribed by the civil law. However, Watson continued, Harry had commissioned us to investigate on the fact that you, Karen, and you, Ashley, were living luxuriously with Harry's money and squandering the insurance money. The eyes of Karen and Ashley widened in astonishment. Indeed, you purchased a luxury condominium and a car, and you spent quite lavishly on host clubs and overseas trips. All the caregiving and household chores were left to Maggie alone. Moreover, there were even remarks hoping for Harry's death. My father knew everything. He knew everything, but he pretended not to know. That's... My mother stammered. Watson responded calmly. In this case, it's unlikely that the distribution of the inheritance will be deemed unfair. Even if you take it to court, it's very unlikely you'll be able to claim anything. Of course, you can try, if you wish. I'll be the one you'll be set up against." My mother's face had turned a pale blue. That's ridiculous," my sister also muttered. "It's absurd. Only Maggie." When Watson was leaving and I walked him out to the entrance, he said, "Maggie, you have grown up to be quite admirable. Your father always spoke of you with such joy." "Really? My father?" "I've known your father since we were young, and I was honored to take on this request. Your father felt he was too lenient with the other two, but I believe he found peace knowing how well you turned out." Watson's eyes were squinted in a warm smile. I was so touched that I teared up again. "Please live a happy life from now on. You know I'm always here to help." Watson left me with those words, and I kept bowing deeply to him. A year later, with Watson's help, I was able to inherit all of my father's assets. As for my mother and sister, my mother, unable to pay off the loans for the high-rise condominium, she had already contracted. The expensive car and the designer goods eventually went bankrupt. My sister, on the other hand, was quickly abandoned by her boyfriend when he learned that she wouldn't be inheriting anything. And I heard through the grapevine that she is now living with my mother and working part-time. They called me for a while, but I kept replying, "I've cut ties with you. Please contact me through a lawyer." I thought that was what my father wanted too. Now, they don't contact me at all. As for me, I used my father's inheritance to attend a law school I had once given up on. Originally, I wanted to become a prosecutor to uphold my father's words. Always be kind and correct. But now, my dream has changed. After working with Watson, who had saved me in my time of need and provided unwavering support, I started to admire being a lawyer myself. So now, I'm studying hard to become one. I strongly wish to become a lawyer like Watson, who is always just and kind.
Get out already! Yeah, give us this house already. I can't believe this is happening in my own house. But if you really want this house, I'll give it to you. Just you wait and see. My name is Kathy Smith. I just turned 60 this year. I got divorced when I was young. My ex-husband was a heavy drinker and he used to verbally and physically abuse me. When he started to raise his hand against our children, I served him with divorce papers. After that, I single-handedly put our 2 children through college. Now I continue to work in flower arrangements, a job I've always enjoyed. Also, I've started online lessons a few years ago and have been enjoying the new interactions. My eldest son, Max, who has always lived at home, married a woman 2 years older than him. I thought that they would move out, but they asked to live with me. Since there was no particular reason to refuse, I agreed to live together, the 3 of us. My eldest son's wife, Anna, was quiet and not good at housework. She started learning it from me, and I thought she was a good girl. But now her initial image is gone and her true nature is fully exposed. In front of me, she talks bad and has a foul attitude. But in front of my son, she acts like a quiet and good wife. The housework she learned, she only does laundry for her clothes. The rest is left undone. This is supposed to be the house where I've lived for many years, but somehow I'm treated like an intruder. Yet I am somehow managing to live with these 2 who show no signs of leaving. But little did I know that day would greatly change my life. That day, after finishing my online lesson and taking a break, the house was filled with Max's yelling. "Hey, old hag! We're out of shampoo! I can't wash my hair!" Despite being in the bathroom, his yelling reached all the way up to my room on the second floor. He is like this every day, so I'm used to being yelled at by him. Not being very quick myself, I went to get the refill shampoo as quickly as I could. "Here, this, I'm sorry I didn't notice." "Too slow. It took too long after I called. Make sure to check time." "I'll be careful next time." Without saying anything, he snatched the refill shampoo from me, and at that moment I accidentally cut my palm a little deeper with the refill bag. Complaining here would just add fuel to the fire. Sighing, I took a bandage out of my first aid kit. Then Anna called out to me. "What? You got hurt? You're so clumsy. It's almost dinner time. Isn't the meal ready yet? I'm hungry." "Oh, is it that time already? I'll start preparing right away. Would you mind helping out, Anna?" "Huh? Why do I have to cook too? I'm not helping, so hurry up and get it done." When she was about to go, Max got out of the shower. He seemed to sense the tension between her and me and interjected. "Anything happen? Don't tell me you were being nagged by the old hag." "No, nothing like that. She just asked me to help her with dinner because she got hurt." She started talking to him in a sugary voice, completely different from her previous attitude. I recognized this routine and resigned myself to what was about to happen. "So she forced you to help. Hey, hag, you know Anna can't cook, right? Are you kidding me with this?" "I didn't force her. I just asked if she could help. When she declined, I was going to do it myself." As I was explaining myself, she quickly wrapped her arm around his and began to argue. "She told me she can't cook because she got hurt. Her hand. And the reason dinner was late was because she was sleeping, not working." "What? Why would you say such a thing? Sure, I hurt my hand, but I never said I can't cook. And I was actually working just before." "Enough. Whether you said it or not doesn't matter now. The fact that you tried to make Anna cook is true. It's your fault, hag." With that, he stormed off to the living room, his back to me. At that moment, she stuck out her tongue in satisfaction as if it was a victory, and then followed him to the living room. He always took her side and never showed any interest in me. And Anna was becoming a real headache. If only he could see her true colors, our lives would be so much different. There were a few times when it seemed like he might catch on. But she was good at hiding her true self and was quite clever with words, which made her a formidable opponent. One day, my biological daughter Lily brought her husband Jake Garcia over to visit. Jake, although younger than Lily, was very responsible and polite. I sometimes think he is too good for Lily, being a young man of such abilities, destined to climb the corporate ladder. "Welcome, both of you. Please come in." "Home, sweet home. Feels good to be back, Mom. Anything new?" Unlike Max, Lily is not prickly. She always brings a warm and gentle atmosphere around her. As I led Lily and Jake to the living room, I saw Max and Anna sprawled on the couch. As I was about to call out to them, Anna quickly sat up straight and began to fix her appearance. Then, with a fake smile, she began to talk to them in a suspiciously sweet voice. "Long time no see. Lily, you look more beautiful than ever. And Jake as handsome as always. Please sit down here." Anna then moved away from the couch she'd been sprawled on and headed toward the kitchen. Once Lily and Jake were settled and started chatting with Max, I followed Anna into the kitchen. Anna was in there preparing coffee for everyone but me. When I bent down to get some snacks from a lower shelf, she threatened me. "I didn't hear anything about them coming over. Are you messing with me?" I did let you know, Anna. You just chose to ignore it. Making excuses again. You'd better watch it. With that, she raised her hand, threatening to strike me. Just as I was preparing to shield myself, Lily walked in. Mom, let me help. What's going on? Anna hastily pulled back her hand. For the first time, I was taken aback as Anna was about to hit me. My daughter, Lily, moved closer to me, positioning herself protectively between us. What on earth was that about? Surely, Anna, you weren't trying to hit my mother, were you? Of course not. I would never do such a thing. I saw something about to fall from the shelf, and I thought it was dangerous, so I was just trying to help, wasn't I, mother-in-law? Yes, that's right. You saved me, Anna. Thank you. I'll take care of the rest of the preparations, so please, just relax. I'll take you up on that offer, then. With that, she returned to the living room. Despite her smiling face, her eyes showed no warmth. Recalling the coldness in her eyes and the near miss earlier, I felt a surge of fear grip me. Lily looked up at the shelf, her brow furrowed in an apparent confusion, but I was too consumed with fear to take much notice. Noticing my obvious distress, Lily rubbed my back gently. Mom, it's okay. It's just us now, and I'll protect you while I'm here. Her words calmed me, the tension leaving my body. I was grateful Lily had come into the kitchen. If she hadn't, I'm sure Anna would have hit me. Thank you. I feel better now. I managed a weak smile, but Lily saw through it. Knowing you, Mom, you won't tell me even if I ask, but remember this, if you ever need help, don't hesitate to contact me. I'll be there for you anytime. Lily's sincerity touched me, and I nodded in agreement. After that, nothing else occurred, and the rest of the day passed peacefully. Night fell quickly, and since it was getting late, Lily and Jake decided to head home after dinner. Anna offered to help prepare dinner, but Lily told her to relax and prevented her from interfering. Perhaps because Lily had witnessed her earlier behavior, Anna complied without complaint. With Lily's assistance, dinner preparations went smoothly. Working together in the kitchen, our conversation flowed freely. It was a pleasant change of pace, and for the first time in a while, I genuinely enjoyed myself. Once the meal was ready and we all sat down to eat, my eldest son praised the food. This is delicious, Lily. Your cooking is the best. Stop it. You're exaggerating. I'm blushing. But I'm not nearly as good as Mom. What are you talking about? Comparing your cooking to that hag's? Mom's cooking is awful. I'm just glad we get to eat a decent meal today. While he openly insulted me in front of everyone, only Anna simply smiled and nodded. Upon witnessing this, Lily and Jake stared at them with serious faces. The room went quiet until Lily addressed Max. I think you're misunderstanding something, bro. Mom did all the seasoning. No way, you're lying. I'm not. I just helped with the prep work and a few other things. He glared at me, perhaps feeling tricked. Anna's smile seemed strained, and I felt something bad was about to happen. That's when Jake, who had been quietly observing, decided to speak up. I can totally understand you make that mistake. My mother-in-law's seasoning is similar to Lily's, so it can't be helped, he exclaimed. Thanks to Jake, the tense atmosphere eased a bit. For a while, the conversation stalled, but Jake made an effort to steer it, telling fun stories and prompting everyone to talk. By the time we finished eating, the mood had returned to a cheerful one. After the cleanup was over and Lily and Jake left, a dreadful incident occurred. It was a time of fear, reminiscent of my past with my ex-husband. Hey, you old hag, you really put me to shame today. My son snapped, spewing insults unlike his demeanor when Lily and Jake were present. There's no such thing as shame, you know, I replied. Max, I heard that she invited Lily and Jake over to get back at us. I overheard her and Lily talking, Anna chimed in. Anna, Lily and I didn't talk about such a thing, I protested. Shut up, you old hag. Anna wouldn't lie. Enough with your acting. He kicked me suddenly. I tumbled to the floor, paralyzed with pain. But his assault didn't end there. He approached me and kicked me repeatedly. Gasping for breath amid the pain, I was desperately trying to protect myself. All the while, Anna was watching this with a giddy smile. You're always useless and it makes me sick, he yelled. He said more, but my consciousness was hazy and I couldn't make out his words. Finally, he seemed satisfied and stopped kicking. Seeing my battered state, Anna burst into laughter. I remembered the terrifying days of domestic violence I experienced with my ex-husband and started crying out of fear. The sight of this only made them laugh even harder. What? Are you crying? I don't want to see old lady's crying face, you know? Right, Anna? Yeah, it's too hard to see. I wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, but my body wouldn't obey. Then they twisted the knife further. Pack your stuff quickly, old hag. Leave this house today. Isn't that a bit harsh? But perhaps she doesn't want to be here anymore. For a moment, my mind went blank. This house is under my name and filled with memories I've gathered over the years. I had never even considered leaving. You understand? Pack your things within an hour and get out. This is our house from today. Move quickly unless you want to be kicked again. I could only submit to his uncompromising words. In agony, I started packing. Tears wouldn't stop flowing during the packing because of my frustration. At the same time, a sense of fear for the future and anger towards them arose. For the first time, I felt a strong resentment towards them and swore to fight back. Once I finished packing, they kicked me out without much conversation. As I was wondering what to do, the thought of my daughter, Lily, came to mind. I hailed a cab and, clutching at straws, headed towards Lily's home. When I arrived at her house, there were lights on, and I rang the doorbell. Through the intercom, I heard her voice. When she realized it was me, she quickly opened the door. She looked very surprised, but that was only natural. Until a moment ago, her mother was unharmed, but now she's got some bruises, carrying a heavy load, so it's no wonder she's surprised. She called Jake and asked him to carry my baggage, supported my body, and led me into the house. She helped me take off my jacket and let me lay on the couch. In my less than ideal condition, she checked the extent of my injuries. Jake brought a blanket to ensure I wouldn't catch a cold and gently laid it on me. Once she finished assessing my injuries, seeing the discoloration on my skin and a large bruise on my head, she suggested taking me to the hospital just to be safe. I declined, saying it was already late and I didn't want to be a bother, but they convinced me to go. Upon reaching the hospital, the examination results revealed that I had multiple fractures. Fortunately, there were no issues with my head, but they suggested that I should be admitted for a few days for observation. I was discharged 3 days later and returned to Lily and Jake's home. I'm really sorry, both of you. I don't know how to apologize for causing you so much trouble. Don't worry about it. We're just glad it wasn't life-threatening. After we're settled in, can we ask what happened? To be honest, I didn't want to tell her. But given the severe injuries, I figured she wouldn't be satisfied with half-truths. So I disclosed everything, including the verbal abuse and terrible treatment from Max and Anna since we started living together. She listened silently until the end. Her husband was also listening from a distance. After I finished my story, I made a request to the two of them. I hate to ask, but could I stay here for just a few days? I'll find an apartment that I can move into right away, so it's just until then. I begged them tearfully. To my surprise, their response was unexpected. Mother-in-law, please don't make that face. While you were in the hospital, Anna and I discussed this. Discussed what? We thought we should live together. What? Are you sure? Yes, let's live together. Never in my wildest dreams did I think they would suggest living together. Overwhelmed with joy, I broke down crying. Thank you, I said, repeatedly. They comforted me until I stopped crying. Afterward, we decided to live together, the three of us, and Lily and Jake made a proposal. It was to give Max and Anna a taste of their own medicine for all the terrible things they had done. But is it okay to do something like that to your own brother? Lily, you won't regret it? I can't forgive those two. I believe they must not be forgiven. Seeing that she had no hesitation, I agreed to the proposal. They asked me to leave the details to them, and I decided to let them handle everything. Around the time the month changed, I received a call from Max. Hey, we had no idea there was still a mortgage on the house. And what's this? We got a summons to court? What's going on? I never said there was no mortgage. It's your house now. You should be the one to pay. You gotta be kidding. We can't afford to pay that much. It's your house you built. You should pay till the end. I refuse. You understand the consequences of your actions, right? It was you who kicked me out, so it's not my business, I said. Huh? You'll pay for this. After he spat out his parting shot, abruptly hung up the phone. Once the call ended, I realized my body was trembling in fear. But believing Lily and Jake were on my side, I reassured myself and managed to calm down. When I later told Lily and Jake about the call, they seemed to have expected it. Mom, just ignore his calls from now on. Upon her advice, I obediently followed. Since then, I've been receiving calls almost every day from Max and Anna. Obeying her advice, I continued to ignore the relentless calls. One day, they showed up at his place. I was giving an online lesson at the time and was not privy to the initial conversation. After my lesson, I headed to the living room and heard familiar voices. Peeking quietly, I saw Max and Anna begging Lily and Jake. Please, just lend us a little bit of money. I'm begging you too, Lily responded. How have you been handling your finances up until now? Weren't you contributing even a bit to your household? Well, we were paying our cell phone bills and insurance, but we never gave any money to my mother. Lily and Jake looked stunned and let out a sigh. So, you're saying that Mom was covering all expenses, including utilities and food, and despite that, you treated her like a maid, verbally abused her, and eventually assaulted her and drove her out of her own house. We don't have a single cent to lend to people like you guys. What do you mean by verbal abuse and assault? Max hesitated, at which point Jake stepped in. I agree with Lily. When we found mother-in-law, she was in a terrible state. She even had to be hospitalized. That's clearly a crime. That's why you should leave for today. Hold on. At least tell us where she is now. We have no reason to tell you, and we plan on taking this matter to court. We'll ask for punitive damages for the pain you've caused our mother, so be prepared. You think you can say whatever you want because we're begging. You're joking. Max stood up suddenly, filled with anger, and lunged at Lily. I was about to step in and open the living room door, but Jake got in between Lily and Max. Max was effortlessly restrained by Jake and could no longer move. Feeling threatened by Max's loud and aggressive behavior, Lily called the police. Shortly after, the police arrived and took Max and Anna away. Once they were gone, I rushed over to Lily and held her close. I'm glad you're okay. Really glad you didn't get hurt. Jake, thank you for protecting Lily. They both simply smiled in response and treated me kindly to put me at ease. Later, the evidence gathered by a detective and the lawyer Lily and Jake hired ensured we would receive a substantial amount of punitive damages from Max and Anna. We found out then that they had each been having affairs and were in a messy situation. Now, not only did they have financial issues, but they also had marital problems to face. Freed from my abusive son and his wife, I regained my freedom and started to recover, venturing outside again with a sense of peace. Even so, I've received some contact from Max. However, this would be considered breaking the court-ordered no-contact rule between us. Every time this happened, I contacted my lawyer and had him handle it strictly. Later, I bumped into our old next-door neighbor at the supermarket. He told me that Max and Anna were constantly arguing about money and infidelity. Anna's true nature became apparent, and that seemed to be the catalyst for their divorce. Since then, they've put their house up for sale. Now the story turns to my private investigator's findings. Max, with his involvement in police matters, lawsuits, and now his divorce, seems to have become the talk of his office. Max, who had a big ego, quit his job immediately. Dumped by his affair partner, he now works part-time. Homeless, he seems to spend his nights in various parks and abandoned buildings. As for Anna, she had been staying at the home of the man she was having an affair with, but it seems she has recently been dumped. She's now seeking work and live-in jobs, trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Her beloved hobbies such as nail art and other fashionable activities have been forbidden, and she seems to be living a humble life now. As for me, I bought back our old house that had been put up for sale, and after some renovations, I now live there with my daughter, Lily, and her husband, Jack. Since Lily has qualifications in aromatherapy and massage, we decided to open a small shop on the spare land we had when we renovated the house. We've been managing well, not just through online lessons, but also with physical lessons in the shop, selling items and running a reservation-based aromatherapy massage service. It's a joy being able to do what we love, and even though we renovated it, being able to return to our own home brings happiness every day. Thanks to them who offered to take care of all complex issues like private investigators and lawyers, which is really hard for me to handle, and have been able to achieve our current lifestyle. I get along well with Lily and Jake, and recently received the delightful news that Lily is pregnant. I can't wait to hold my grandchild in my arms. Looking forward, my life will only become more joyful, and I consider myself very fortunate. I cannot thank them enough. I am truly grateful.
Good morning. It seems like it's going to rain this afternoon. I'll turn on the dehumidifier to prevent any headaches. I offer flowers to the altar, recalling that smile from days past. I miss you now that you're gone, but I'm living strong. Then, now, and always. I'm Kathy, 29 years old. I've been married and living with my husband's family for 6 years now. I was raised in a household with some old-fashioned beliefs, and I had an arranged marriage as my parents wanted. My husband's family, too, has their fair share of old traditions. There's a slight departure from the common sense of the general public. However, life isn't as stifling as I thought it would be. My father-in-law, a firm head of the family, and my mother-in-law, who occasionally spouts strange things but is harmless, treated me kindly. My husband, Andy, is busy with the family business. We're not exactly a sweet couple, and I feel a bit disappointed that he isn't keen on having kids. But overall, we had a good relationship. That was until my father-in-law left this world. Oh, Kathy, you're daydreaming again. The weather's getting weird, too. It's so gloomy and damp every day. Talking to a photo every day is so morbid. My mother-in-law never ceases to complain. Good morning. When I went out to the garden, I saw my father-in-law's favorite flowers, so I cut some before the rain starts, I said with a forced smile. I didn't want to spoil my happy morning mood here. But my mother-in-law looked even more annoyed. What's this? You're making a big show of offering flowers. You just want to say you're taking care of things, right? Is this some sort of snub at me? I sigh inwardly. Honestly, you really don't have any common sense. Even if the forecast says it's going to rain, turning on the dehumidifier beforehand is just a waste of electricity. Who do you think pays for that? Since my father-in-law passed away, she seems to have lost her filter. What used to be occasional nitpicking has significantly increased. At first, I thought it was a way of venting her loneliness after losing her husband, but lately she seems to be looking for me just to criticize. Andy asked me to wash and dry the shirt he's going to use for his business trip starting tomorrow. Drying it here is the fastest. But with the weather turning rainy this afternoon, it's hard to air dry clothes naturally. blaming Andy for your inability to prepare in advance. How embarrassing for a wife as clumsy as you, to be able to claim you're a good housewife despite your mistakes. How awful. My mother-in-law's face twisted even more, but I'm not neglecting my chores. It's impossible to prepare for a sudden laundry request in advance. However, she persistently nitpicks without considering such circumstances. She said it's gloomy and damp earlier, but I feel the same way about her. She's much more troublesome than the sticky humidity. What's more, she's always exaggerating the daytime events to my husband, always painting me as the bad guy. Initially, my husband ignored it, but recently he's been saying, "It's annoying, make her stop," or "Isn't it your fault?" and getting in a bad mood. As a result, there's no sign of my mother-in-law's criticisms or her false tattling stopping. On the contrary, they seem to be escalating. But if I confront her, her shrill voice only gets louder, reaching frequencies that echo outside the house. In the end, letting her do as she pleases and apologizing to let the storm pass was the most peaceful way to deal with it. I'm exhausted. I'm sorry, father-in-law, for showing you such a mess. My mother-in-law's face twisted even more, but I'm not neglecting my chores. When my father-in-law collapsed from a stroke, my mother-in-law said, "I don't have the strength for caregiving," and did almost nothing. During changes in the weather or season, my father-in-law, who suffered from headaches and joint pain, would be grateful to me for my strenuous efforts to maintain a constant temperature and humidity. He would warmly smile and thank me, saying, "It's quite different now, thank you." As someone who had lost her real father in her childhood, I was initially confused about how to interact with my father-in-law, but he was very gentle, even while being steadfast. I feel like he thanked me in various situations. He was someone who was not stingy with his words towards anyone, and was positive about everyday events. What stands out to me is when I was still new to the household, before I became accustomed to the kitchen, I once forgot to turn on the stove while concentrating and learning the household seasoning for cooking. When it was time for the meal, I realized I hadn't cooked the potatoes. I braced myself, expecting to be scolded, but my father-in-law laughed it off and said, "Human beings feel a meal is even more delicious when they're hungry, so let's wait patiently." He even went on to thank me for always providing delicious meals. In this way, he lightened my spirits, and this attitude did not change even when he fell ill. Even during my first experience with caregiving, which I wasn't proficient in, he kept telling me, "You're a lifesaver, thank you." He was like my real father. That's why, even though time has passed since he passed away, I still find myself taking to his picture every morning, and I'm concerned about the room temperatures and humidity before it rains. My mother-in-law, who's become more harsh, and I sought solace in his smiling picture. "Hey, what's this, all wrinkled and covered in fur?" One night while cleaning up after dinner, my husband Andy came holding a shirt I had ironed and put it in the suitcase in the evening. "And what about our bedroom? It's a mess, and the stuff for tomorrow's trip is all scattered. What the hell? I told you I'm leaving early tomorrow." Andy has also changed since my father-in-law passed away. He has become harsher. I truly realized that my father-in-law was the pillar of this household. Andy threw the shirt at me with a stern face, and I was surprised. "Wait, what? What do you mean the stuff is all scattered?" "Hold on, this..." From the wide open window, the rain was pouring in sideways, drenching the curtains. And on the bed, the luggage had spilled out of the suitcase and was scattered about. In a hurry, I closed the window and crashed down to wipe up the poured-in rain. "Huh? Brownie?" In the corner of the room, there was a community cat, Brownie. "Poor thing, you're shaking so much. Come here, I'll dry you off." Despite the disastrous state of the room, I couldn't ignore the drenched cat, so I gently wrapped Brownie in a towel. "I know you're not the kind of kitten who would do something like this." Holding Brownie, who was purring lightly, I consoled him. "Hey, what are you doing?" Then I heard Andy's irritated voice from behind. "That's a stray cat, isn't it? Don't use a towel on something like that, and that thing probably made the mess in the room. Get it out of here now." Behind the disgruntled Andy was my mother-in-law. "What a mess! The room, the stuff for the trip, everything is all messed up. And what's that dirty thing? Using a fine towel, and that is unbelievable. I'm speechless at your lack of common sense." She's hardly speechless, she's triumphantly blabbing. "Prioritizing a cat that broke into the house and caused this mess over the actual disaster. You must be out of your mind." My mother-in-law's voice, louder than ever, made me finally retort. "With all due respect, mother-in-law, it wasn't Brownie who made the mess in the room, right?" "Huh! That can't be." My mother-in-law defended herself, but it didn't make sense no matter how you look at it. Because the shirt that Andy brought was wrinkled and covered in fur, but it wasn't wet. If a soaked cat caused a mess, the shirt and the luggage should be wet too, shouldn't they? Exactly, the stuff on the bed was messy, but not wet at all. Rather, only the shirt was covered in fur. The rest seemed merely scattered. And I had the suitcase closed and placed next to the shelf. It would be impossible for a cat to move it to the bed, unlock it, and mess it up. That's not all. My mother-in-law's hand was covered in several band-aids. She didn't have them in the morning, so it's proof she injured herself in the afternoon. If my guess is correct, those scratches are from being scratched by Brownie. The windows are intact, and so are the screens. How on earth could the cat have gotten in on its own? Moreover, only where this little one was is it soaking wet. There aren't even any wet footprints. Without someone deliberately doing it, this couldn't have happened. As I talked while keeping eye contact, my mother-in-law, Kathy, backed away inch by inch. Her demeanor was almost as if she were confessing her guilt. And the bandage on your hand. But before I could finish my sentence, my husband's voice boomed. "Shut up!" Caught off guard by his loud voice, I cringed, to which my husband, Andy, spat out angrily. "I don't care. Just kick it out and clean up quickly. Don't make me repeat myself. I have to get up early tomorrow. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Get it ready fast." Surprised by Andy's outrage, I pushed back. It does matter. This is over the top no matter how you look at it. This isn't something you can brush off as a mere prank. We need to take it seriously. I couldn't hide my anger at Kathy's excessive behavior, but Andy was dismissive. "Don't mess with me. It's your job to sort out the house issues. Do I ever bring my work problems home and complain? No, right? Even after coming home tired, I can't rest every single day. I have to listen to such unpleasant stuff. I'm fed up," he vented out furiously. It seemed as though his pent-up frustration at having to listen to my daily complaints about Kathy was overflowing all at once, but that wasn't fair. I never grumbled to Andy. It was Kathy who kept feeding him lies. Why am I the one getting blamed? I'm having a hard time too. I opened my mouth again, but Andy, still angry, grabbed my arm and dragged me to the front door. "That's enough. Go somewhere else. If you weren't here, my mom wouldn't have anything to complain about." Before I could even put on my shoes, I was pushed outside. I heard the sound of a lock clicking into place. "Hey, wait a minute. Open up, Andy. Hey, hey!" I called out in a loud voice, but there was no response from Andy, only the sound of Kathy's malicious laughter. Even though I couldn't see her, I could easily imagine Kathy's spiteful smile. "Just like that dirty stray cat, perhaps a stray daughter-in-law would be more appropriate. Serves you right." After that, the light in the entrance was turned off and I was left out in the pouring rain, holding the cat in my arms. I can't believe it. After I was locked out of our house and had to take refuge at my parents' place, and a few days later, I was summoned again to the house. They were a historically significant family, so my mother cautioned me not to get divorced and apologize. However, I was feeling down. I'm probably going to be scolded. I thought about having a discussion, but now I might as well say that I want a divorce. He hasn't contacted me since that day. Feeling heavy-hearted when I arrived, I found a room full of relatives, and the atmosphere was more daunting than I had anticipated. In contrast, Kathy and Andy, whom I hadn't seen for a while, looked triumphant. Could this be about disowning me? This is a bigger deal than I thought. I became even more nervous, but the head of the main house, who would be my grandfather-in-law, said something unexpected. "The reason I gathered everyone here today is to discuss the inheritance. We plan to switch to distribution, keeping up with the times." This was not at all what I expected. I was relieved that it seemed I wasn't going to be blamed. On the other hand, Kathy and Andy became excited, pushing their way through the relatives. "How will the assets be divided specifically? What about the house we're living in? There's land, vacation homes, and a company too." Kathy brazenly put forth her greedy demands. She whispered to Andy that he should seize this opportunity to gain control of the business given his promotion. Andy didn't seem entirely against the idea. Seeing their shamelessly happy faces, I decided once and for all to go through with the divorce. I could easily imagine my future with the wealth-seeking Andy and Kathy, who would accuse me of being a freeloader and gold digger. It would be better to cut ties cleanly. Right now, they would likely be happy to divorce. But then, "There's no property for you two to inherit." My grandfather-in-law rejected Kathy and Andy's expectations with a heavy sigh. "What?" The patriarch spoke to the two of them, who were taken aback. "I will bequeath my assets to Kathy. There's none for you two." Having my name abruptly called, I was at a loss for words, and my in-laws were flabbergasted. You must be joking. A wife doesn't have such rights, and she's run away from home abruptly without a shred of responsibility. A failure who doesn't even bear children. We were thinking of disowning her, right, Andy?
Yeah, it's a hassle to have a dispute at home. If we don't have enough hands to manage the house and the business, hiring people is more efficient. It's better for our mental health, I think.
They coldly discarded me. Then the patriarch, who had heard the statements, pulled out an envelope from his pocket. A will? The patriarch solemnly read out to the stunned couple the will of his son, my father-in-law. In the event of a dispute after his death, all borrowed property should be returned to the main family. However, in regard to his wife, Kathy, she continued to receive the protection of the main family. In other words, no matter what happens, I would always be able to live with the support of the main family.
What? That's a lie, right?
My husband was speechless and my mother-in-law was in shock. The patriarch shrugged his shoulders.
Kathy, I plan to bequeath you the property you need to live. If I lend it, it will tie you to this house. But if I bequeath it, you can live alone even if you divorce. Or you could remain our daughter-in-law and remarry if you want. I was also adopted, so I can somewhat understand your position. As the main family, we will respect your decision, so don't worry.
The patriarch who said this and laughed resembled my father-in-law in my memory.
Well, wait! That's too much! What did we do? She ran away on her own. We are the victims here.
She argued vehemently that it was me, the wife, who was in the wrong.
There is no need to add insult to injury.
Huh? What are you talking about? As my mother-in-law tilted her head, an unexpected person appeared in the living room at the patriarch's door. The elderly neighbor from next door? To my surprised face, the cheerful man showed me an envelope that was identical to the will I had seen earlier.
I was asked by your father-in-law to contact the main family if something happened at home. When I saw them kick out the wife alone, barefoot and penniless on a pouring night, I didn't think it was right, so I stepped in. Right, Brownie?
The old man, carrying Brownie in his arms, handed him over to me. Thank you for the shoes and transportation money that time. I couldn't personally thank you, and you went out of your way to consider this. As I thanked him, hugging the warm Brownie, he brushed it off.
It's give and take. We help each other when in trouble. He used to say, he was a good man. That you were going through a tough time after he was gone is a well-known fact to the neighbors. You held up well.
My eyes grew hot. My father-in-law, till his last, had sown seeds of kindness. Thanks to that, my neighbors were on my side.
Even now, do you insist on being the victims?
The patriarch asked in a stern voice. My husband and mother-in-law, who were watching our exchange with their mouths agape.
If you can't respect someone as an outsider, then you should leave. Andy, you don't need to come to the company anymore. The two of you start over somewhere else and become people who understand shame.
At the patriarch's roar, my husband and mother-in-law shrank back. Under the cold gaze of the patriarch and the gathered relatives, my husband and mother-in-law looked like they were sitting on a bed of nails. Afterwards, under the supervision of the main family, my mother-in-law and husband left the house. My husband struggled to find a new job, and they seemed to have started working part-time together. As for me, I divorced, but chose to stay at home. With the patriarch's permission, I am now taking care of my father-in-law's memorial monument. The main family also shows consideration, telling me to consult them if there are changes such as remarriage. We've received some peaches in season from next door. Let's eat them together, as it's their first harvest year. Here, a little share for you too, Brownie. I think I will cherish these peaceful days surrounded by my father-in-law's portrait and the smiles of my neighbors.
My name is Emily. I'm 45 and currently dieting for Thanksgiving. Why? Because last year, I accidentally stored about 7 pounds of turkey fat on my own body. If I lose 7 pounds now, I can afford to gain it back during Thanksgiving, right? What? That's not how it works? Oh well, I tried. From Thanksgiving to Christmas, there's just too much good food. I'll probably even buy myself some Valentine's chocolate soon. Oops, I'm drooling. Looks like I'm set to gain weight after this year. Anyway, today I want to share a winter memory of mine. I hope you'll listen. It happened when I was 25. I had decided to marry my boyfriend Richard, who I'd been dating for several years. I introduced him to my dad, James, and my mom, Linda. You know, the typical meet the parents situation. My parents liked Richard, and everything seemed to be going smoothly until a problem arose. My older sister, Susan, who's 2 years older than me, came home from work and was instantly captivated by Richard. It's strange, but sisters can just tell what the other is thinking. Susan had fallen for Richard at first sight. I hoped I was wrong, but Susan blushed when Richard shook her hand. She was always looking up at him when she talked. I thought it was inappropriate for her to act that way towards my boyfriend, but I guess she couldn't help it. I thought she'd eventually put a stop to it, so I ignored it. But after Richard left, Susan cornered me, looking ridiculous in just a bath towel, and said, "You should call off the wedding." She kept bad-mouthing Richard, saying he was a player and that I could do better. But she had no evidence. When I asked her why she thought he was a player, she said, "It's a woman's intuition." Susan has never had a boyfriend. How could I trust the intuition of someone with no experience in relationships? In that case, I believe in Richard's personality, which I have seen with my own eyes for several years. So I brushed off Susan's warning and didn't take it seriously. Richard started visiting my parents' house more often. He said he wanted to get along with my family, so I invited him over without a second thought. My parents were happy, and I had no reason to object to my future husband getting along with them. Everything seemed fine, but Susan was trying to build a good relationship with Richard in a different way. According to Richard, Susan would grab his arm when I wasn't around, press her chest against him, and ask, "Don't you think Emily is childish?" She even tried to show him under her skirt by pretending to trip. Richard laughed it off, saying it was so obvious it was funny. If he had taken her seriously, I would have been very upset. But Susan mistook Richard's politeness for interest and kept making advances. Initially, it was love at first sight, but the fact that Richard had a stable job in a decent company also seemed to attract her. She was not going to give up on a man who was handsome, capable, and guaranteed a stable future. My parents, who should have seen Susan's inappropriate behavior, said nothing. Actually, they've always let Susan get away with anything. To be honest, Susan has always been incompetent. If you ask her to heat up some food, she'll melt a non-microwave safe plastic plate in the microwave. She's bad at studying and sports, especially swimming. She always found excuses to skip swimming classes, like injuring her foot or having a skin rash. She's bad at studying, sports, and even household chores. To be honest, Susan isn't exactly a beauty. But my parents doted on her just because she's the eldest daughter, and instructed me to secretly support her. Yes, secretly. I shouldn't outshine her. I should make her look good. It's unfair, considering we're sisters. Well, maybe my parents felt that Susan was a poor child who can't do anything, and that's why they wanted to protect her. Ironically, I was good at almost everything. I could quickly learn and master new skills. Maybe that made me less endearing to adults. So I even managed to complete the Make Susan Look Good mission effortlessly. There was a time when I pretended to be incompetent outside the house. But after I got through puberty, I started to rebel against my parents, thinking, if I keep this up, I'll fail my exams. If I had continued to listen to my parents, I might have actually become a child who can't do anything. This rebellion made Susan somewhat resentful of me. But we were never on bad terms. We talked normally, and I even gave her advice sometimes. Despite the imbalance of my parents' affection and Susan's hostility, we were still a pretty normal family. But that balance was shattered because Richard didn't reciprocate Susan's feelings. "You can't allow this marriage with Richard." The night before the wedding, Susan told our parents. "Come on, Susan, you will get married soon too. my parents said. Yes, Susan. That's not the point. I want to get married before her. She's too young. But the wedding is tomorrow. Aren't you on my side, Mom? That's not true. I was quietly listening to this disastrous conversation in the hallway. Wait for my sister, who has no romantic experience, to get married first? If I did that, I'd grow old in no time. What on earth is Susan talking about? I thought she'd calm down after venting, but then I heard my dad say, Fine, your mom and I will skip the wedding tomorrow. Will that make you happy, Susan? What? I couldn't believe my ears. My mom agreed, practically begging Susan for forgiveness. This was beyond doting. It was more like worship. At this point, it's not at the level of doting. But Susan sighed and said, Fine, I'll settle for that. I at least want to make sure your marriage isn't recognized by the family. She really didn't want me to marry Richard, probably because she was in love with him. I couldn't believe it. Because of Susan's unrequited love, my parents were planning to skip my wedding. So the wedding day arrived. Despite it being a sunny day, I was sleep deprived. Not because I was too excited about the wedding, but because I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation between Susan and my parents. I'll never forget the smug smile on Susan's face when my parents officially told me they wouldn't attend. At the venue, I had to tell Richard and my in-laws that my family would be absent. I'm sorry, my sister opposed this marriage, so my family won't be attending, I said. I've never felt so humiliated. Not showing up to your own daughter's wedding. Even my in-laws couldn't believe it. Upon hearing my story, my in-laws fell silent for a moment. Just when I thought the mood couldn't get any heavier on this special day, my mother-in-law Karen took my hand. Soon after, my father-in-law William placed his hand on top of ours. You do have a family here, you know. Don't forget that. Let's not make today a sad one. Come on, smile. Tears filled my eyes at Karen's gentle smile and the warmth of William's hand. Hey, Emily. I'm your husband, remember? Don't say you're missing family, Richard said, patting my head gently. Don't cry, bride. Don't cry, my in-laws and Richard hurriedly said. Even as they laughed. You'll ruin your makeup. Amidst all this, Karen looked at me in the eyes and said, Emily, I know it's tough with your parents, but this is a good start to your new life. Begin your own family from now on. Karen hugged me tightly, as if to make up for my parents' absence. Richard and William joined in. Everything will be okay, just like Karen said. This is a good start to my new life. I vowed to build my own happy family, and that day, I married Richard without a hitch. Fast forward 15 years. We have one daughter and 2 sons. Our responsible and capable daughter, Patricia, is a lifesaver, taking care of our rambunctious sons, Robert and Thomas. But man, the way she yells, "Enough already!" She's just like me. Well, it's gone. Life was going smoothly. Richard's job was going well, and we'd bought a house. But then, trouble showed up. My dad, Mom, and Susan. We'd been estranged since the wedding, and hadn't given them our new address. Somehow they found us and showed up at our house. Naturally, my first words weren't, "Long time no see," but, "What are you doing here?" "We have a favor to ask Emily," said Susan. Even my parents chimed in. "Only you can help us." What's going on? What could they possibly want after 15 years? As I hesitated, not sure if I wanted to hear more, Mom blurted out, "Give Richard to Susan." What? Even Richard, who had come to see what was going on, was stunned. Wait, what? How did we get to give Richard to Susan? I asked, my voice tinged with disbelief. Both Dad and Mom looked uncomfortable, while Susan seemed oddly smug.
Susan is still single. She's turning 42 this year.
So what? I was even more confused by Dad's words, and so was Richard.
Actually, Susan recently lost her job because her company went bankrupt.
Oh, that's tough.
I think you can understand why we're worried about Susan's future. She's your sister, after all.
I kept quiet, even though I thought, not really, while looking into my parents' eyes. What are they going to say next? I was more curious than annoyed by Dad's words, so I didn't interrupt.
Susan has always had a crush on Richard, and she's still single. You've already enjoyed your married life with Richard, right? Please let your sister have him for the rest of her life.
What? I looked at Richard, who seemed as stunned as I was, as if his soul had left his body. Ignoring our reactions, my parents pleaded, and Susan remained smug. From her demeanor, it seemed Susan was certain she'd get Richard. Well, our parents always gave her what she wanted. So maybe she's just delusional, but this is too much. As I was pondering this, Richard tugged at me. It seems that the soul has returned.
Hey, isn't this an opportunity?
You mean that?
Yeah, this is exactly like that joke you made when you were drunk.
Should we go for it? We quickly turned back to face Susan and our parents. Do you really like Richard that much? Caught off guard by my question, Susan stammered. Yes. I've always loved him. Really, really loved him. Wow, that's some strong emotion. You've loved him for 15 years, even though he's someone else's husband? Yes, it's been hard, thinking of you two together. We were doing so well. Trying to keep a straight face was hard, given Susan's confident tone, but Richard and I managed. You win, if you feel that strongly. I'll step aside. My parents were the ones surprised by my words. Really? But you love Richard too, Mom exclaimed. Well, the truth is,
I've always been in love with Susan.
Richard chimed in. Susan's face turned bright red. I knew it! I knew you loved me! You never minded when I touched you. And the way you looked at me was so loving, we're finally going to be together. I had to hold back my laughter. Hey, Richard pretending to look down and wipe away tears isn't hiding the fact that you're shaking with laughter. Hold it in. Let's spend the rest of our lives together, Richard. She must have whispered those words to her imaginary Richard countless times over the past 15 years.
I'm happy, Susan. Support me from now on.
Richard smiled. Of course.
Great. I'll quit my job then.
What? Susan's flushed cheeks suddenly paled.
I want to be with you every second, so I'll quit my job and stay by your side.
What?
I won't even go outside. I'd love it if you could accompany me to the bathroom. I'll watch you do housework all day.
As Richard spoke with a grin, Susan froze, then began to panic. My parents also started to lose their composure. Wait, I'm not working either, so that's going to be a problem.
Why would it be a problem? We'll be together, so what's there to fear? Even if we don't have money, we'll be happy, right?
No, but we have monthly bills like insurance to pay. This isn't some fairy tale.
So, you can't love me if we don't have money?
That's not what I'm saying. Susan's eyes clearly dart around. I quickly said, Well, Richard, when we divorce, make sure you pay me a hefty settlement, okay?
Don't worry, Susan and your parents will cover it.
Richard smiled. My parents turned pale and exchanged glances. Actually, Susan, taking your sister's husband is just wrong.
Yeah, Susan, that's crossing a line.
The desperation they had shown earlier had vanished. My parents quickly changed their tune.
What? You promised I'd get Richard. You're not acting like parents. Well, Susan, this is a different matter. Shut up! Whose side are you on?
Susan became hysterical, pulling Mom's hair while Dad tried to intervene. What a sad scene. Richard and I watched for a moment before he finally spoke.
Excuse me for being blunt.
Susan and our parents all look at Richard.
But I'm not attracted to Susan at all. I've been polite because she's Emily's sister, but I really don't like women who make advances on me. It's a turnoff, completely. And the assumption that I like Susan is also a bit. I can't deal with women who jump to conclusions.
Susan and my parents were speechless.
So what was that all about, Richard?
Could you not call someone else's husband by his first name? Richard doesn't like Susan. We're happily married with kids, I said, restraining Susan, who approached my husband with a pale face.
You tricked me!
Why would you think a man you haven't heard from in 15 years would be interested in you? Are you that naive? Susan's face turned red as she held back tears. If you were so charming, maybe, but who would want an unemployed woman living off her parents? You can't even do housework, can you? With those skills, even if you got married, you'd be dumped. I hit her with the hard truth, and Richard laughed in the background. Apparently, I struck a nerve. Susan couldn't stop crying. My parents tried to comfort her, but looked troubled. So, that's that. We're not giving up Richard.
Give it up, Susan.
Susan broke down in tears. That's what's embarrassing about her. No growth at all. Don't contact us again. We're cutting ties. And don't expect any help from us if you're unemployed. With that, I closed the front door. When our kids asked,
"What happened?"
I said, "Seems like a wild animal was making noises, probably looking for food." Robert wanted to go see, but I stopped him. We could still hear Susan's wailing from outside. 5 years later, Susan is still single. She managed to find a job but got fired for making advances on younger coworkers and married men. She's been banned from dating events for her reckless behavior. I'm pretty sure she'll stay single for the rest of her life. No doubt about it. Even my parents, who are retired, are working part-time jobs to save money for her. They probably realize they can't rely on Susan for their future care. Well, they've spoiled Susan so much, they might as well work themselves to the bone to make her realize the consequences. As for me, thanks to my hard-working husband and well-behaved kids, I don't have to worry about tuition or work. I mostly take care of the house and enjoy my days. Well, maybe if I had a job, I could offset the holiday overeating. Or maybe not. My teenage daughter, Patricia, keeps saying she wants to diet, even though she's perfectly slim. I'm doing my best to discourage her. Save that for when you're as wide as Mom, I tell her. My sons, Robert and Thomas, have taken up dancing, and even performed at a local event recently. They've won some awards, and are determined to make it big, like the Jabberwockies. My in-laws visit us regularly, and often join us for meals. I say in-laws here, but honestly, I consider them my real mom and dad. They've even suggested going on a resort vacation together during the kids' spring break. I hope they stay healthy and live long enough to enjoy many more days with us. Sure, there were the challenges before we got married, but ever since, it's been nothing but happiness. I finally feel like I have a real family.
I'm Michelle, a 48-year-old housewife. I've been with my husband Stephen since college, and we got married 3 years after we both started working. We had our first daughter, Linda, right away, and then 2 years later, our son, Matthew. There were tough times, like when I was distressed by my daughter's friendship problems, or was consumed with nursing my son, who is prone to illness. But now those are all good memories. Our children have grown up, and are now enjoying their college life living alone. Our marriage has lasted for over 20 years. My husband is bossy, but has always been diligent in his work. But he left all the housework and child rearing to me. But since my friends often grumble about similar things, I've never given much thought about it. This is just how husbands are. Our passion burned out long ago, but we have a sense of companionship as a couple who've been together for many years. Both the physical affection and the conversations have decreased, but I guess that's what happens with any long-term couple. I don't have any major complaints, but there's no excitement either. I do the housework, work part-time, and take care of my husband. I guess this routine will continue until one of us passes away. I thought my husband wanted that too, but it turns out he was betraying me. One weekend, my husband brought a young woman home. She introduced herself as Stephanie and seems to be his subordinate. Apparently she's 26, about the same age as our daughter. As he embraced her, my husband said something shocking. "I'm marrying her. I want a divorce." Excuse me? It was like a bolt out of the blue. "Matthew has turned 20, so our role as parents is done. I want to spend the rest of my life with a person I truly love." Hold on a minute. I can't digest all of this. The woman, my husband's subordinate, sneered at my confusion. "Dar marrying me? So we want you to leave? Dar? What does that mean? I don't understand. Wait. She means darling." While I was reeling, the two of them began to emphatically talk about their love and why they should be together. "It's wonderful to love someone," they said. I might have agreed if it were someone else's story. "She's my junior at work, and she's been healing my tired body and soul from work and home life." My husband said this without any hesitation. "And he always helps me with my mistakes, treats me to delicious meals. Look, he even bought me this bag. Has he ever bought you something like this?" The woman flaunted a bag that even I, not keen on brands, recognized as being from a high-end store. Of course, I've never been given such a gift. In fact, he hasn't even celebrated my birthday for the past few years. "You're clearly just in it for the money." In a fit of laughter, I deny their so-called pure love. "Men find wealth charming too, don't they? The reason why you old hags get dumped is because you don't understand that." I understand that. I've always known that. I'm not planning on lying and saying I don't need money. I appreciate my husband who works hard every day too. "That's enough." My husband sighed, seemingly irritated. "If I'm going to spend the same money, I'd rather spend it on a young cute girl who knows how to please a man. You're past sell-by date." "That's not. Your time is up. We want you to leave." The young woman clung onto my husband and looked down on me. My world came crashing down, and all I could do was stare back at them with despair. I could not utter a word. The following week was hell. My husband started going to this woman's house with no reservations, and he barely spent time at home anymore. On the other hand, the woman kept barging into our house every day, berating me. "Are you still here? Hurry up and get a divorce. How pathetic to cling onto a man who doesn't love you. You're so embarrassing, old lady." Why do I have to put up with this woman's verbal abuse? What did I do to deserve this? Is being an older woman a crime? I was angry, but I had planned to spend my life with my husband till the end, so it took time to accept the reality. Besides, I was paralyzed at the thought of the impact this could have on my children's future, as they would end up with a single parent. It was my children who finally gave me the push I needed. "Mom, why didn't you talk to us about this before?" My daughter and son, who were living on their own, came home for the weekend. Even though I hadn't told them anything, they seemed to know the situation. "Linda, Matthew, why?" "Dad reached out to us. He said, your mom is jealous of a younger woman and is reluctant to get a divorce. Matthew, you understand how I feel, don't you?" My son said, looking disgusted as he spat out my husband's selfish argument. "That's terrible, dragging my son into this. Ew, that's so gross. The mistress is 26, right? She's about my age. That totally sucks." My daughter made a face, seemingly utterly disgusted, and then she forcefully slapped my shoulder. "Mom, you should just get a divorce." "But what if it affects your job prospects or future marriages?" "If someone's going to judge me based on that, I wouldn't want them in my life anyway. my daughter said, sticking out her tongue and making a goofy face. In an unusual serious tone, my son looked into my eyes.
Hey, Mom, have you ever considered thinking about yourself more than us? If you divorced Dad, would there be any issues?
Any issues? With the house, I would only have to take care of myself. For money, if I can get him to pay for the kids' college tuition, I can survive on my part-time job and the rent income from the apartment I inherited from my father. If I don't have to take care of my husband, I can work more hours. Without him, I can even start learning, right? I won't be scolded for going to lunch with my friends on weekends, cheering for an idol on TV without being told it's embarrassing to fawn over young men would be nice. In the first place, he's the only one who's infatuated with a younger woman. If I divorce him, I'll be free of all these annoyances, right? Isn't that the best? I won't have any problems even if I get a divorce. I declared out loud. The moment I said that, I felt as if everything in front of me had suddenly become brighter.
Exactly.
In fact, the one who's going to have issues marrying a selfish man like Dad is his mistress, right?
Yes, exactly.
My daughter strongly agreed.
Mom, we appreciate how much you care about us, but I'd rather see you happy. I can get through anything if you're healthy.
My son and daughter are my strong support group.
You're only 48. That's not even halfway through your life. It's a waste to dedicate the rest of it to that crappy father. We'll try our best to become independent. You should live your life for yourself, Mom.
Linda, Matthew, I couldn't hold back my tears. Thank you. I'm so lucky to have you both as my children.
That's because you raised us with so much love, Mom.
Despite feeling exhausted from being betrayed by the husband I trusted, my children's words brought comfort to my heart. I haven't wasted my life. I haven't until now, and I won't in the future. I won't hesitate anymore. I will live the rest of my life for myself. Once I completely got over my feelings for my husband, I acted swiftly to divorce while their affair is still going on. There's a risk that their relationship could end before our divorce is finalized, which could complicate the divorce proceedings. I hired a lawyer who specializes in divorce cases and prepared to move out. Once everything was ready, I informed my husband of my intention to divorce and arranged a meeting. We settled all matters, such as the kids' college expenses, asset division, and alimony, within reasonable bounds. Honestly, I wanted to leave him penniless, but making the divorce process smooth was the top priority. Besides, it was clear to see that the cheating pair was on a path to disaster. Doing anything unnecessary could prolong the divorce process, and I didn't want to poke the hornet's nest. My ex-husband paid me a lump sum, as if he was disposing of an expired woman, like one would pay for a garbage disposal. The mistress was reluctant at first, as his fortune dwindled, but for some reason that I can't fathom, she seemed to reconsider him as a generous spender. I nearly burst out laughing at their farcical display, but I held it in. Just a little more patience. A man who knows nothing but pride, and a woman who's after nothing but money, they have no idea how much they're going to struggle from here. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. over there. Our last joint effort as a couple was submitting our divorce papers to the city hall. Behind us in the line at the counter was that mistress. As if to rub it in our faces, after we completed our divorce filing, she boldly asked for a marriage license at the counter. The City Hall employee looked astonished, comparing us three, then hesitantly handed over the papers to the woman. There she was, hugging the papers as if she'd won a trophy. I felt like it was none of my business, but I needed to confirm with the woman. Are you sure you're okay with that guy? What? Sour grapes? You're the one who wanted a divorce. Hurry up and get it done, lady.
All right.
If this young girl with a future is being deceived by this old man, it's truly a pity. But it looks like I can pass on the joker without any qualms. Leaving the two behind, who had begun to fill out the marriage registration form in a cuddle, I left the city hall. The sky was clear and blue. I wonder if those two are also looking at the same scenery. And so I started a new chapter in my life. After the divorce, I moved into one of the apartments that I owned. Of course, there's no rent. It's in my hometown, so there are plenty of my old classmates around, and I'm never short of people to talk to. It's also convenient for transportation, so my daughter and son come to visit on weekends. I couldn't thank my parents enough for leaving me such a place. The only worry was quitting my part-time job where I had worked for many years. but I was lucky that it was a chain store. The manager pulled some strings and got me hired at a store near my new place under the same conditions. It was all worth it for having worked so diligently for so long. The only time I felt a little lonely was the first month, when I cooked too much food. Now I'm enjoying the joy of living alone and cooking just for myself every day. About half a year into these days, I got a call from an unknown number. I inadvertently answered it, and a woman shrieking in a piercing voice without even introducing herself. "Hey, lady! Everyone at the company and my fiancé's relatives are all saying they want to attend our wedding. It's your fault, isn't it?" That's an irritating way of speaking. Unforgettable. My ex-husband's mistress. Blaming others for the seeds she herself has sown. It's just too much. Cut the accusations. All I did was relay the fact that my husband is divorcing me to be with a young, cute colleague at work. That's what you were saying, wasn't it? And I only spoke the truth and did farewell to the people who had been good to me. But it's really strange that everyone didn't show up. My ex-husband's family and coworkers are all serious people. They don't accept dishonest people like the both of you. We were just here seeking true love. Oh, really? How about explaining to everyone what true love is, then? I suppose it's because the people around my husband are quite sensible, and they have such a strong rejection of the two adulterers. But I was happy to know that the good marital relationship I had built over the past 20 years was affirmed. That woman made a lot of noise, but in the end, the wedding was postponed. It wasn't the cold reason from the people around her that influenced it, but the fact that she was pregnant. When the child was born, she went out of her way to contact me, demanding that my children and I send a baby gift. My ex-husband, on the other hand, seemed to have said something silly to the kids like, "Be nice to your new sibling." Of course, there was no way we could accept that, but my daughters made complex faces at the news of their half-brother, who was more than 20 years younger. I felt bad, too, but it's not the child's fault for being born. So I took her call with an adult attitude. But she just kept complaining that no gifts for the baby from Dar's relatives. Why don't you realize that people are keeping their distance? There's no way that's true. If they see me, they should know that the new wife is lovely. We need to make our debut at a wedding ceremony. Wait, you still want to have a wedding? How incorrigible. Of course. I made a promise with him. I'm going to wear a white dress at the wedding, and we'll go to Hawaii for our honeymoon. We'll take photos in the wedding dress with a blue sea in the background. You're jealous, right? What a cheerful woman. That's a lovely dream. But do you know how much it will cost? It costs about $200 million to raise a child. Huh? She seemed a bit flustered, but she boasted. But it's okay, because he earns a lot. He may be earning now, but your husband will retire when your child is still in middle school. After that, even if he's rehired, his income will drop significantly, and his pension is still far off. Oh, I wonder if she felt something there. Even though his salary might be higher than your friend's husband's, if you consider his age, he's just average. In fact, he's already earned most of his lifetime income. She seemed stunned over the phone. She really made a child without thinking, just as I thought. But it's too foolish to be astounded. He'll be hitting 60 in just over 10 years. His blood pressure is high too, which is a concern for his health. What? Oh, you didn't know that? Have you been properly looking at his medical examination results? He should have had issues every year. She seems to be at a loss for words. My ex-husband hates hospitals, so I had a hard time getting him to go for re-examinations without his nagging ex-wife. He's probably ignoring his health checks and eating and drinking as he pleases. I further hammered the reality home to her, who had fallen silent. Do you think he'll be able to work healthily until retirement? But don't worry, you're young. You can still work for over 30 years. By the way, are you on maternity leave right now? Well, I asked her sarcastically, knowing she wouldn't be able to return to her job after her maternity leave. The news of their infidelity and illicit marriage had reached the higher-ups in their company. They both faced disciplinary actions for violating compliance policies, extinguishing any chance she had to resume her job after maternity leave. A friend who was my ex-husband's colleague had duly reported this to me. She might have had a chance of redemption if she had realized the harsh scrutiny she was under when nobody wanted to attend their wedding. But it seemed she had finally understood the gravity of her situation. Good luck. He can't do any household chores or take care of the baby. But if your love is real, You can overcome anything. I really admire you. I have a lunch date with my friends. Enjoy your child-rearing, housework, and taking care of your husband. I cut her off without listening to her response. She was probably shocked by the dismal reality of her age gap marriage and the infidelity that she blindly rushed into. I'd love to see the look on her face up close and laugh, saying, "That's what you deserve." But I'll pass on that. Spending time with my beloved friends is more worthwhile than belittling a hated adversary. Fast forward a year. "Hey, you're Michelle, right?" As I was leaving my apartment, a man called out to me. It was my ex-husband. This was the first time I had seen him since our divorce. He seems to have tried to reach out to our kids in various ways, asking them to love your newborn brother and let's get along as a family. Though I never disclosed my post-divorce residence, he knew I inherited my parents' apartment and probably deduced that I lived there.
"Long time no see."
My ex-husband smirked, raising the corners of his mouth. I tried to recall if he had always had such a creepy smile. In the first place, I hadn't even seen his smile in recent years. I thought various emotions would well up upon seeing his face, but surprisingly, I handled it calmly. "What do you want?"
"Old, aren't you? We were together for 20 years. It was you who wrecked the relationship."
Ignoring my sour expression, my ex-husband started rattling off complaints about his new married life. In short, his new wife is nagging him to stop wasting money, take care of the baby, wash the dishes, and do the laundry. He should also start saving money because he's almost retiring. He should play with his kid because he's a father. He should be changing diapers and caring for their son more. My ex-husband gripes as if she's saying something unreasonable, but her claims are generally accepted as a norm in society. She's finally realized this unhealthy, lazy man who doesn't help with housework or child-rearing will be nothing but a burden when he retires. And in this age when it's normal for fathers to help with housework and child-rearing, she must be shocked to see her friends' husbands actively doing housework. The problem is the man in front of her, who even after 2 years can't seem to understand his position.
"When you get married, women change. It's scary. But you never said things like do the housework or help with the kids, did you?"
That's right. Times were different then, and I too thought that was the norm.
"That's why I realized the only one who really loved me was you."
Excuse me? Taken aback by my ex-husband's absurd statement, I blinked in surprise. I wonder what kind of misconception this foolish face has. He scratches his nose with an embarrassed grin and starts to speak.
"It must be lonely being single at your age. You're even more beautiful than you were when we were married. I thought maybe you were waiting for me to come back. Sure, you're a little old, but you were the best because you always went along with me without it complaining. I'm willing to forget it, so you should be honest, too."
Excuse me?
You still love me, don't you?
What the hell are you talking about? I let out a strange scream and nearly fell over.
What?
My ex-husband jerked at my shriek and froze. I thought that my resentment and anger towards my ex-husband had softened due to the enjoyable days after the divorce, but the anger welled up again at his outrageous attitude. What kind of nonsense are you talking about in broad daylight? What exactly would I gain by getting back together with a man like you who has no redeeming qualities?
Huh? What?
My ex-husband stammers. If I've become more beautiful, it's probably because I'm stress-free now that I'm separated from you. I'm grateful to your mistress. Thanks to her, I was able to divorce you, and I'm having a great time. I'm really glad I didn't have to live a life changing your diapers.
No way.
My ex-husband's face turns pale at my firm rebellion, probably seeing it for the first time. That's right. Even when he declared divorce, I didn't tell him my true feelings. And even after we were separated, I just went with everything without complaining. Could you move aside? I'm going on a date now.
A date?
My ex-husband's voice squeaks like something out of a comic book.
You? An old lady like you?
That's right.
You're definitely being tricked. Wake up.
That's fine. If I'm spending money, I'd rather it be on a young and handsome guy. You're past your expiration date.
What?
I'm just returning the words you once said to me. And if I had one more thing, you're just a large piece of trash that can be recycled. He opens and closes his mouth like a fish, but it seems like he can't find any more words to say. Well, I have someone waiting for me. Let's both forget about each other and find happiness. Goodbye.
Michelle.
He calls my name in a pleading tone, but I don't even bother to turn around. I quickly walk away. At this rate, it won't be long before he's a 2-time divorcee. Someone once said that becoming happy is the best form of revenge, and I really believed that. After all, it seems like my brisk departure left him in complete shock. Mom, when I reach the meeting place, my daughter is waving her hand and approaching me. She's my date for today. Sorry I'm late. Your dad showed up.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. I finally got to say everything I wanted to say, and I feel so refreshed. But right now, it's all about the concert. I worked my part-time job really hard for this day. Hey, Mom, shall we go? Yes? Today is the concert of a male singer I've always loved, and it's my second time attending. I've even become capable of securing tickets without my daughter's help. I've picked up other hobbies, but following this singer is my top pleasure right now. I attend his musicals with friends. I play his new songs over and over in my car. Even my son sends me updates about his performances on TV shows. It's not just the freedom to chase after what I love that makes me happy, but the fact that everyone is supporting my passion. I might be laughed at for being an old woman fan, but it's fine. I'm not bothering anyone. After all, this is my life. I had completely forgotten how fun it can be to live for myself. Cooking for my family, planning outings for the kids, maintaining a comfortable home for my husband, those things brought their own satisfaction. I found my value in those things, and the thought of losing all my past and my worth with divorce was terrifying. But it wasn't like that at all. My children cherish me. The relationships and the work that I've built up over the years are still very much alive. Rather than clinging to the past, it's much more enjoyable to give it your all and start a new life. Stepping into the unknown requires courage, but once you get started, there are many exciting new encounters. I'm going to enjoy living my life to the fullest.
I'm pregnant with John's child, so you, Karen, should divorce John, because it's just too pitiful for a child to grow up without a father, don't you think? With tear-filled eyes, Lisa gently stroked her still flat stomach. Behind her, Lisa's parents were glaring at me. John's childhood friend and ex-girlfriend Lisa had shocked me several times before, but this time, I was truly and deeply disappointed. After all, my husband John is already... My name is Karen. I had a happy marriage with John. The reason why it's in the past tense is because John has left this world. John went out one morning with a smile saying, "I'm off," and came back cold. He had passed away suddenly from an illness. John and I had just started our calm married life. Until recently, John and I had been troubled by my mother-in-law and Lisa, John's ex-girlfriend. Since John's death, I've had almost no contact with my mother-in-law, but she was a selfish woman. She wanted to control John's life as she wished. The young John was a good listener to his mother, and Lisa was almost like a fiancé chosen by their parents. They were told by their respective parents that they were a couple, so until they were in middle school, they really thought they were lovers. But when he became a teenager and reached puberty, John realized that it was ridiculous to have a fiancé in this day and age. Lisa seemed to like John, but John had someone else he liked, so he talked to Lisa properly and persuaded her that this relationship was strange. He had successfully parted with Lisa. But Lisa hadn't given up on John. John was good-looking and intelligent. He was really bad at sports, but that gap was one of the elements that made him popular. In other words, John was a ladies' man. So naturally, after breaking up with Lisa, he had other girlfriends. When Lisa heard that John had a girlfriend, she would show up in front of John and his girlfriend on their dates and start babbling about her memories with John. No girlfriend of John's would feel good about hearing stories like how their first kiss was when they were in kindergarten, or how they had always believed they were engaged because their parents had said so. Even when John had a girlfriend, Lisa would interfere and he ended up being dumped. Or so I've heard. Of course, I, who started dating him after he became a working adult, also received the same treatment from Lisa. Surely, it was unpleasant, but I didn't particularly want to break up with John. John was truly cherishing me, and I wanted to cherish him as well. Our relationship was about our feelings for each other, and I thought Lisa had nothing to do with it. When John said, "I'm sorry," looking remorseful, I said, "Don't worry about it. Let's have some ice cream. I'm hungry." And he said he was truly relieved. He said that was when he wanted to marry me. John and I decided to get married, but this time, Lisa and my mother-in-law formed a tag team and stood in our way. Lisa's family is quite wealthy, and it seems that my mother-in-law wanted John to marry Lisa and benefit from it herself. Since Lisa seemed to want to marry John, their interests were aligned. I was harassed many times. When I went to my in-laws' house to greet them, I was surprised when my mother-in-law invited Lisa to the house for a tea party, even though it was a day we had told them about in advance. My father-in-law was trying to calm my mother-in-law down, saying, "That's enough," but in front of my strong-willed mother-in-law, he barely had a say. Whenever she retorted, "You're so annoying. Lisa is just like a daughter to us, it's fine," my father-in-law would just shrink back and fall silent. Lisa knew all of John's past girlfriends, so I was the one she enjoyed laughing at the most, positioned as the worst-looking one. John didn't choose his wife for her looks but for her personality, but I can't believe Karen is such a wonderful person, Lisa said snidely, causing an uproar with my mother-in-law. John was furious with my mother-in-law and Lisa. "Don't ever get involved with Karen again," he yelled, taking me away from his family's house. He apologized to me repeatedly and truly did not invite his mother-in-law to our wedding. Of course, John didn't invite Lisa to the wedding either, which obviously didn't sit well with my mother-in-law and Lisa. In revenge, my mother-in-law and Lisa waited for a moment when John wasn't home and visited our new home. I was told by John that I didn't need to interact with them, so the moment I saw them on the security camera, I asked them to leave, but they didn't give up. Since they kept repeatedly ringing the doorbell and causing a commotion outside, I reluctantly opened the door because I didn't want strange rumors to spread around the neighborhood. My mother-in-law and Lisa, who barged into the house, looked around and started complaining about the interior. The indirect lighting that John had chosen with care was just tacky to Lisa. When I said John chose that, Lisa instantly flipped her stance and said, "That's so John, I thought it was a nice design," making me feel her bitchiness. I served them snacks and tea because they arrived uninvited and started saying they were hungry, but I was incessantly nagged by my mother-in-law for not serving homemade stuff, and Lisa complained the tea was bitter. After they had their fill of complaining, my mother-in-law and Lisa left before John came home. Exhausted, I fell asleep on the sofa, and when I woke up, John had gently covered me with a blanket. I reported everything that had happened that day to John. John, furious, called his family's house and Lisa to complain, but his family showed no remorse, and Lisa was thrilled to get a call from John after so long. I realized that whatever we said to these people were meaningless. After discussing it with John, we decided not to open the door if my mother-in-law and Lisa came again, and to call the police if they caused a commotion outside. If they still didn't leave, we decided to consult the police. After that, it was really tough when my mother-in-law and Lisa actually came and we had to call the police. But perhaps because they were scolded by the police, my mother-in-law and Lisa finally calmed down and never came to our house again. It was tough, but we should be able to lead a peaceful life from now on. Believing so, John suddenly passed away. At the funeral, I was in a daze all the time, clinging to the coffin and crying. My mother-in-law told me it was because I had stressed John out that he had passed away so early. If my parents hadn't defended me, I might have followed John. I thought Lisa would come to the funeral, but she didn't. Even now, I shudder to think what would have happened if they had accused me together. 3 years had passed since John's death, and I was still living in the house we had shared. It was brief, but I simply couldn't bring myself to leave the house filled with memories of my time with John. One day, as I was enjoying the peace and quiet time, the doorbell rang. When I checked, the monitor showed Lisa and a couple who resembled her, likely her parents. Behind Lisa's smiling face, her parents wore stern expressions. Though curious, I decided to invite them in. Since the anniversary of John's death was approaching, I opened the door without any suspicion, which was a mistake. "Long time no see, Karen. You see, I'm pregnant with John's child, so you have to divorce John, okay? It's not fair for a child to grow up without a father, right?" Lisa explained, her big eyes welling up with tears as she caressed her flat belly. I'd been flabbergasted by Lisa before, but this time I was genuinely dumbfounded. After all, my husband John had already passed away. As I was trying to make sense of her words, her parents stepped forward and began to raise their voices. "Even though John was married, he made a move on our Lisa and got her pregnant. We want him to take responsibility." "You aren't going to say that Lisa should raise the child alone, are you? That's completely absurd." As the trio made a scene at the entrance, I felt a chill run down my spine. Even after John's death, Lisa continued to torment him. John was always kind and gentle, but Lisa caused him so much trouble. I'd seen John stressed out over Lisa numerous times. I couldn't forgive her. With that thought, I invited Lisa and her parents inside, saying, "It's no good to keep standing there." I led them into the family room, where our family's portraits were displayed. Lisa's parents, who entered the room before her, let out a surprised, "What?" when they saw the portraits. Lisa peeked into the room, her eyes wide and her voice catching in her throat. Of course she'd be surprised to see John's portrait displayed. While they were still in shock, I unfolded a portable table in the living room, prepared enough tea for everyone, and sat down in front of the three of them. "So, Lisa, you're pregnant with John's child, huh? John passed away 3 years ago. I'd love to know how you managed to get pregnant with my late husband's child. Are you okay? You look a bit pale," I asked, pretending to be oblivious to the three who had turned pale. Lisa, her eyes filled with tears, uttered in a trembling voice, "That can't be true." But her parents didn't let her wallow in her sorrow. "We are deeply sorry." All of a sudden, Lisa's father prostrated himself, followed by her mother. Her father tugged at Lisa's arm, forcing her to prostrate herself as well. I'm sorry. We didn't think that John had passed away." As Lisa burst into tears, her father grabbed her by her collar and shouted, "Who's the father of the child you're carrying?" Lisa then started to reveal her misconduct. The reason Lisa stopped visiting our house abruptly was not that she had given up on John, but because she had been transferred for work. The parents of Lisa and John no longer communicated, and it seemed this family truly did not know that John had passed away. As for the child in Lisa's belly, in short, it's unclear who the father is. It could be her married boss or one of the several men she met at bars. Lisa has led such a chaotic life that it was impossible to identify who the father was. Even though she was in love with John, it seemed that Lisa was trying to tear us apart by claiming the child she was carrying was John's. Despite having no relationship with John, she believed that kind-hearted John would not abandon her, now soon to be a single mother. On Lisa's confession, her mother burst into tears and her father exclaimed, "How shameful!" while I calmly asked Lisa, "How many months pregnant are you?" 3 months. The baby is already kicking." "You usually start to feel the baby move around 4 months at the earliest. You seem to be feeling the baby move quite early. Are you sure that there's really a baby in there?" Considering Lisa's past actions, it was questionable whether there really was a baby in her belly. As I pierced Lisa with a cold stare, she trembled and answered, "To tell the truth, there's no baby. I love John, I really do. That's why I..." As Lisa started to babble incoherently, her mother began to smack her on the back. Lisa's father, once again in tears, bowed deeply to me and said, "We will come another day to apologize," and left the house. To the departing three, I stated, "No need for further apologies. Please don't come here again." After seeing off Lisa and her parents, who hastily retreated, I lit a candle at the home altar. I said a prayer and spoke to John. "John, thanks for lending me your strength. I'm not one to voice my opinion or get into arguments. I don't think I would have known what to do in such a heated situation. Yet, surprisingly, I was able to respond calmly to Lisa and her parents, just like John did when he was alive. John was good at calmly assessing a situation when a dispute arose and solving the problem. When Lisa and her parents bowed their heads to me, I felt a sense of clarity and I was able to respond appropriately. It felt as though John was lending me his strength. That day, I cried for John for the first time in a long time. The house without John was unbearably lonely. A few days later, despite my telling them not to come again, Lisa's parents came to visit. I didn't want them in the house filled with memories of John, so I told them to meet me at the nearby local restaurant. After preparing to go out and paying my respects at the home altar, I headed to the restaurant. There, Lisa's parents were waiting for me, looking pale.
"We deeply apologize for our rudeness the other day. We're truly ashamed of our daughter,"
began Lisa's father. Apparently, upon hearing of John's death, Lisa burst into tears. After crying for a while, Lisa was possessed by a delusion that I might have been the cause of John's death and tried to confront me at my house, but her parents held her back and took her to a hospital instead. Lisa was diagnosed with a severe mental illness, a condition where she doesn't hesitate to hurt others if it means realizing her desires. To correct her distorted cognition, it seems she will be undergoing counseling from now on. Lisa, who quit her job because she misunderstood that she would marry John, will probably have to live a tough life facing herself while receiving counseling. Her parents are expected to bear the cost of treatment. Although they come from a wealthy family, Lisa's parents seemed quite old. They expressed their difficulty in leaving behind a daughter like her.
"This is our apology for the other day."
With those words, Lisa's parents handed me an envelope filled with cash. I didn't even bother to check the amount. I didn't need the money. I rejected the cash envelope right away. I don't need this kind of money. All I want is to never have to deal with you or Lisa again. Why don't you use this money to move somewhere far away so you won't have to cross paths with me? I said with a hint of sarcasm. Lisa's parents replied solemnly, we would. After that, it appears they really did move. They sent a letter with the news of their move along with some more money, which I also rejected outright. Looking at the address of their new home, it seems they moved quite a distance away. Now, Lisa will probably never be a part of my life again. You know, our married life has been filled with so many disturbances, I said to the photograph of my late husband, John, besides his favorite cake on the altar. But still, I cherished every moment after, and my life with John was a happy one. Thank you, I said, on what happened to be the anniversary of John's death. From now on, I plan to live my life alone without John. I will experience many joys that John didn't get to, and when I eventually join him in heaven, I will have plenty to brag about.